What's up, preppers? Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to talk about home defense. In an SHTF situation, bugging in how you can defend your home, your family, and yourself. So, before we start, disclaimer time. Everything discussed in this video is relating to completely theoretical situations. Situations where we may find ourselves slipping into an alternative reality where there is no longer rule of law. I always recommend to follow the word and the rule of law whichever country you're in during peace times. With that said, let's get on with the video. SHTF has happened. The initial few days of people wondering what's going on, thinking the government will come and save them, has started to pass, and it's looking bleak. But you're sitting pretty. You've got all your preps at home. You've been waiting for this moment, or you have been ready for this moment for quite a while. But what sort of people are going to be out there roaming around the streets, potentially looking to get your supplies? Well, there's a few different types. The first one to look out for is your average Joe who's just reached the point of desperation. These people often won't have a plan of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. They're just looking for opportunity, looking for a house that looks like nobody's in it, that could potentially have some food in it, looking for shops that haven't been looted yet, just looking for the easy opportunity to get that next meal or whatever supplies they need. These people should be pretty easy to cover with some very basic security and deterrence. Secondary to this, of course, would be gangs and organized individuals, groups of people. These have much more a tactical approach to taking belongings and loot and things like that, and will be much better equipped and organized. So much harder to defend against than your average raving desperate loony, but definitely something you could still try and prevent and try and deter. Your first point of deterrence is actually your house itself, and even in peace times, things like this will be recommended. Securing your house has to be key for even peace times, for the amount of crime that's in different areas, and making sure your family and yourself have a nice secure place is key even now. So a lot of these considerations should be considered during peace times. Number one is sufficient locking on your door. Just having a simple Yale lock or something like that, not always quite enough. So making sure you've got some sort of mortise lock, some sort of deadbolt, making sure that door is always secure, even during peace times, is key. Same with windows. If they can be locked, excellent. If they can be alarmed, even windows without locks, you can now get locking items that you screw on that it puts an extra deadbolt onto the window so they can't be forced as easy. So there's ways to secure your doors and windows that's even in peacetime. Throughout this whole video, I'm also going to build a section of my Amazon store which has all my recommendations on, based around home security. So make sure you go and check out the link below and have a look at some of the ideas in there. Even if you don't buy them directly from there, it might jog a few ideas that you could do to secure your own home better. Now, I've often heard the term of grey man, which we know is like blending in. And people have discussed this with their house, making their house look abandoned, making their house look like nobody's there. I honestly think this is the wrong tactic, because people like the desperate people will try and get into a house where they think nobody is there because there might be supplies in there. They're more likely to do that than go for a house where they know people are in there, where they know it's secured and there's a risk involved. So trying to make your house look like an abandoned house is probably going to invite more trouble than it's actually going to deter. Also, never underestimate the power of a sign. Now, I'm not saying put a sign up that says minefield, because it has to be believable. But dogs, things like that. Uh, Danger, dogs patrolling the property, etc. Trespassers will be dealt with. Things like that. Signs themselves can be a good deterrent, especially for the less determined of the looters. Securing doors after SHTF, as well as them locks and things that we've discussed before, deadbolts, and even a security bar. These security bars are awesome. Two mounting points either side of the door. It's just a simple bar that drops in and it stops that door being forced. As well as that, you can have simple wedges. You don't have to spend a fortune for wedges. I have actually got some that have an alarm. So if it's forced against the wedge, an alarm goes as well, which is a great little notifier. But a simple wooden block wedge would suffice under the bottom of all the doors, giving that extra security. Making the actual entranceway beyond the door unaccessible as well, as long as that's not your fire escape and you've got alternate ways of getting out. Actually blocking up that main front door, putting furniture that you don't need, anything like that, into a hallway or a vestibule is an excellent additional layer of security on there in the SHTF situation. The windows, bit more difficult because you're not going to go out and suddenly fit bars after we've hit this SHTF situation, because that would attract a lot of attention. And most people don't want bars on their windows just in day to day, depending on where you are. If your neighbors have them and a lot of people have them in your area, get bars on your windows. Clearly, you need it where you live. But if not, if it's a nice neighborhood, then you want to be thinking alternative options. One thing I really do like is the solid wood shutters that go inside your house and close up around the window. Most of the time, these are decorative, but built right and secured right, these can be practical as well, and an excellent layer of security, as well as a complete blackout of any light escaping. Again, as long as they're built and fitted correctly. Failing both these methods and a bit more budget friendly is security film. Now, you can get mirrored, you can get shaded for security film, but you can also get completely clear security film. So you fit that on the inside and it looks just the same as your normal window. But if anyone was to smash or throw something at it, it stops that window breaking and shattering. They can still break through, but you're not going to get excess of glass there, and it's not going to be as easy for them to do so. In the house, beyond the front door and the first layer of windows, think of your second and third lines of defense. If you really are determined to stay where you are, and once they're trying to get in the door, you're not going to bug out the back and run away, but you have to hunker down and stay where you are. For example, there's fallout outside and you don't want that added risk. Think about your second and third layers of defense. And we talk about things like barricades, and it's not a Western movie, but it is generally a good option. I have a fire door halfway through my house, which is a good solid fire door, which could be blocked off as another level of security. If they got into the first section, then that separates the second section completely, and it would be another heavy layer of security there. Other options, such as a wall of furniture, somewhere to get behind to defend yourself. And the third option is, for me, is always going to be on another level. So upstairs. Now, I'm not talking about Home Alone swinging cans off and hitting them in the head, but anything you can throw onto that stairway, a set of shelves, anything like that that blocks the stairway and you can defend it from the top is a great advantage position. You've got the high ground. They've got to try and get up past obstacles. It's always going to be an easily defendable position. And hopefully, if they're the desperate kind of looter, they will make their way into your kitchen, take everything you've got downstairs and leave without affecting you upstairs. Always think of backups and contingencies in this situation. If for some reason they start or a fire just starts, you need to make sure you can get out. Some sort of emergency ladder, some sort of fire escape, some sort of way of escaping the upstairs, not through the main stairwell. Another good layer, depending on your property and the size and the kind of layout you have, are traps, especially ones with audible alarms. One great thing to consider, which I've actually got coming now, are trip alarm mines. They use legal 12 gauge shotgun blank rounds. You can order them online. You don't need any sort of special license for these. And it comes with a device you can set up a tripwire to, or you can set it to a handle or something like that. And if it's triggered, it fires this 12 gauge shotgun round and creates the noise. It doesn't do any damage, but it creates the noise, the loud bang. And not only is that an alarm for you to know somebody has got through point X, Y, or Z, but it's also a deterrent for the person that is intruding. They might not know that they've just tripped a wire. They've just heard a gunshot right next to them. Turn and run might be their number one choice at that point. So, something to consider. There's all sorts of different audible trip alarms that you could have. You could have sirens, things like that. But these, because they're a shotgun round and it's all mechanical, then you've no reliance on electricity or anything like that. So a great option there. Next bit, we're talking about blending in. So yes, we're going to mention the grey man approach. Now, a lot of the grey man stuff can be dismissed because if you're running around with a backpack on and looking like you know what you're doing, whether you're wearing camouflage or not, you're going to be some sort of target. So take everything when people mention grey man stuff with a pinch of salt. However, I do think blending in an SHTF situation, maybe it's a slowly degrading situation where the government is still trying to help a bit, supplies are low, but it's not completely without rule of law. You've got to be able to blend in, and key for that is your OPSEC. Now, I know you might think it's ironic, somebody on YouTube where you could see my face, etc., talking about OPSEC. But OPSEC is all about your immediate surroundings. I don't give away my exact address to anyone, and I'm pretty sure I'm not big enough for everyone in the street to recognize me. If I was that big, then I would have a secure location than this anyway. However, OPSEC is about your immediate people around you. Even if you class them as friends, neighbors that you've known for a long time, they could be the nicest guy in the world. 3 days without any food, they turn into a very different person. So just be careful who you're sharing the fact you prep with, and make sure the people you're sharing it with, you be willing to take them in and help them as well, because they will come knocking at the door should SHTF happen and they are not ready. OPSEC as well is tactically prepping. Do not get a delivery of 1,000 tins of beans in one day in the middle of the day and your neighbors see you shipping crates into a garage of beans. Guess what? They suddenly know that you're stockpiling something. So just think about it tactically, spread shopping over different times and things like that, and make it less obvious. In this situation as well, grey man for yourself is something you should strongly consider. Even if you have a fully powered house like Scottish Prepper 73, he's just done a 24-hour video, which is awesome, but he has all the power banks. He's pretty much running like a normal day at his house. However, if everybody else is walking around disheveled, ungroomed, and queuing up at a aid truck to get some water into a jug, and you're well-dressed, well-groomed, and are not bothered about going getting the water, you become that target. So make sure you're blending in as well, even if that means washing tactically. You want hygiene, that's 100%, but, you know, add a bit of dirt on the face afterwards or before you go out. Just don't shave, things like that. Have a set of clothes specifically for going out that are a bit more disheveled, and it will not give it away as much that you are well prepared for this. You are eating like kings and you are clean and watching TV every night. Right, let's get down to the nitty gritty. And before we do, I just want to go through that disclaimer again. Everything discussed in this video is related to a completely theoretical situation where we find ourselves slipping into this alternative reality without any sort of rule of law, and the shit has really hit the fan. I always recommend you do your own research and always follow the letter of the law wherever you're based in the world. This is only for entertainment purposes. Right, weapons. So we're going to briefly go through the types of weapons, and bear in mind, I'm based in the UK, so it's roughly based on that. Depending on where you live, you might have different laws and different availability for different things. So again, make sure you do your own research. Now, in the UK, people think we don't have guns. There's no guns in the UK. Absolute untruth, complete fallacy. They are everywhere. You just don't see them as regular, and the legal ones are regulated very well. There's lots of illegal ones. There's also lots of government bodies that have access to them. So, in a without rule of law situation, complete collapse, they're going to be about. So, just be careful when somebody is approaching your property or trying to get into your property. There's always a chance they could be more heavily armed than you, and you've got to really assess the situation and think if it's worth making that stand or if it's just a case of hide or get out of Dodge. Nobody wants a full-on shootout over a can of beans, but firearms are something you can definitely look into as a hobby in this country, whether it's for sport shooting, whether it's clay pigeon shooting or something like that. There's all sorts of reasons to get into that. So it is something you can consider. Now, I don't recommend that as a self-defense method because there is so much red tape in a rule of law situation that it's going to be difficult with that one. So only if you have a very legitimate reason would I consider firearms. But so what's the next best thing for the UK? Now, blank firing weapons are legal without a license in the UK. However, in essence, it's an offence to possess it as an imitation firearm, very similar to things like airsoft guns that look realistic, because it's dangerous to walk around waving a gun around. Now, the offence is based on using it in public or on highways if you're in Scotland. But any other premises where it's public access. So in your own home, it's absolutely fine to own a blank firing handgun or a replica, things like that, for historical purposes and for reenacting purposes or for whatever you see fit. So they are something you can have. It's a great visual deterrent. It's a great audible deterrent. However, it comes with a massive caution sign. In that theoretical situation of SHTF, if you decide to point your blank firing firearm towards somebody and pull the trigger and it makes a noise and they don't run away because they pull out their own firearm that's not a blank firer, you've suddenly brought a spoon to a knife fight.
I see you've played knifey spoony before.
So just consider that. It could be a great deterrent, but it also could attract the wrong sort of retaliation. And nobody wants to be in a firefight where your bullets are make-believe and their bullets are very real. Next one, bows and crossbows. Lots of this been in the news recently. Lots of channels done videos on crossbows because there was unfortunately some murders in the UK based around a crossbow. I mean, there's a lot more murders based around vehicles and knives and things like that, but because it was a crossbow and it was unusual, it hit the headlines. So people have talked about them being banned, being licensed. Not sure what's happening yet, but we'll keep a close eye on that one. However, bows and crossbows are great in this futuristic scenario without rule of law for things like hunting. They're very practical, they're silent, good for stealth. However, if you're thinking about defending your home, consider how close quarters it is. Consider the fact if you've got a large crossbow, it's not something you can easily and quickly reload. If you watch things like The Walking Dead and Daryl's running around with his crossbow, you see him shoot it. You never see him stop him, putting it on the floor, putting his foot in the stirrup, pulling the cable back, all that lot. It's just not that easy as they show in this TV series, and it's not as practical. You miss with that first shot, you've got a good minute of them coming towards you. So consider your space, your environment, and what the uses are for. Same with a bow. Now, I'm starting archery lessons to improve my skills with a bow and get trained off some professionals. This probably is in an SHTF situation would be less about defense for me and more about providing food if I could and when I could. Having a huge composite bow in a small house or through a hallway or down some stairs, not always the most practical form of defense. When it comes to this close quarter combat, there is options. There is crossbow pistols. Rarely they will actually do enough damage to kill somebody or stop them immediately in the tracks, but a couple of them little bolts will definitely be a major deterrent and make somebody think twice about trying to get your cans of beans. Also, with bows and crossbows, remember the ammo's quite cheap, so you can stockpile that a bit. You can also make ammo if it really came down to the crunch, but also the ammo is very recoverable. So if you shoot a few shots off trying to take down some sort of animal for lunch and you miss, but if you go back to the general area, you might find one of the two out of the arrows and you can retrieve them and reuse them. So there is that to consider when it comes to the bows. Much more common, much more available in the UK are air rifles and air pistols. You can get different types of ammo of these, and some of them are quite deadly. They're quite pointed and they could pierce something. You know, a good strong leather jacket half the time will defend people enough, but still quite a deterrent. The airgun power is something you always have to consider, and this is different wherever you live. So make sure you check the rules for the country you're in. But in the UK, the legal muzzle energy limit for air rifles is 12 feet pounds, and for pistols is 6 feet pounds. That translates to 16 joules for rifles and 8 joules for pistols. This in itself is not the most deadly of weapon, but a 16 joule rifle will certainly stop somebody in the tracks and make them think twice. It can also be used for small game hunting with the right ammunition. There is different types of ammunition for deterrence as well, including non-lethal rounds, which are about this big, balls that will just really hurt and really bruise and could stop somebody as a non-lethal way in their tracks. Air guns are a great visual deterrent, a great defense tool, as well as a potential hunting tool. Just make sure you do your research, you follow the laws, and you're very careful and safe when operating these. As you're doing your research, you'll find hundreds of videos across YouTube for some great channels. I'm not even going to start to do reviews of air weapons because there are some channels out there that are absolutely superb and I don't even want to try and step on their toes. So just do the research on the type of ammo you should be using, the type of rifle you should be getting, what you're using it for, where you're using it. There's people showing penetration tests and all sorts of things like that. All that material is on here on YouTube, so go and check that out and do your own research. And last but not least is handheld. Now, handheld, we're talking about probably the most common weapons that are going to be flying about in this Teotihuacan, no rule of law, chaos looting Britain. And that is anyone with a lead pipe, a knife, a machete, etc. And we see this kind of knife crime levels in the UK already. So we know that the availability of them is going to be above anything else. So if you're considering handheld defense in the UK in this situation, theoretical, remember, don't forget the disclaimer. This is not real. This is for entertainment. However, if you're considering things such as bats, hunting knives, things like that, if you happen to play baseball and you have a bat on hand, if you happen to play golf and you have golf clubs, anything like this could be classed as a handheld weapon. What I would put into consideration is how close do you want to get to potential attackers? I don't think it's as much as a deterrent as any of the previous ones if they saw you holding something like a big stick. So you've got to be ready to use it. This is the one thing when it comes to the handheld side of things. People might not challenge you pointing some sort of projectile weapon at them. But if you've got something handheld, they might fancy their chances. They might be hungry enough to just go for it. So you've got to be ready and able to use it. Personally, I would consider things like a staff or a spear because you've got a bit extra range to keep them at a certain distance. But you can train with it. You can practice yourself. There is martial arts that incorporate stuff with staffs. There is all sorts of ways you can get yourself familiar with that kind of weaponry. Keep in mind, though, the same as the ranged weapons, like we mentioned with the bows, your environment. If you've got a 7-foot staff or a halberd and you're trying to defend somebody in a thin hallway or a stairwell, you're not going to get much swing on it. So consider how you use it and consider what you're using it for, and if it's suitable for your scenario. And that goes for everything on this. Just remember, however you choose to equip yourself for an SHTF Teotihuacan situation in that alternate reality, remember, disclaimer, then make sure you've taught yourself or you've learned offline or you've gone to lessons and got the skills and practiced and made sure it's a practical solution. Don't just build yourself a wall of weapons and medieval maces and have never actually tried to use them, because the first thing you're going to do with all of them is injure, kill, maim yourself. That's what you'll end up doing by accident. So make sure you're very safe with things like this and you practice and ideally learn from professionals. That's it for this one. I'll be doing a members video soon, going much more into depth in weaponry and things that I've chosen to keep hold of and try and test out and how I'm learning and stuff like that. So there'll be a much more in-depth video on that, but that'll be on the members area, just because somebody feels the need to report anything that I do where I don't put enough disclaimers in. So because of them little people, that'll be a members video for later. For the rest of you, make sure you consider everything I've thought about. Anything I've not thought about, please pop it in the comments below. Remember, I'm here to learn as well as to give. So thanks for watching. Hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment below, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.